Shot in the line of duty on her youngest daughter's 4th birthday, PC Sharon Beshenivsky was killed responding to a robbery in Bradford in 2005, a murder which devastated her family, colleagues and community.
My heart goes out to the family, to the office.
Try to explain to them that, you know, they won't see the mother again.
As a boss, it's your worst nightmare and it's happened.
The fight for justice has taken nearly 20 years and manhunts across the globe. Now, at last, the mastermind of the robbery and the final suspect is convicted, bringing perhaps closure for those who loved her dearly. This is the story of the murder of PC Sharon Beshenivsky. On the 18th of November 2005, PC Sharon Beshenivsky was coming towards the end of her shift when she and colleague Teresa Milburn responded to an alarm at a travel agent in Bradford. Arriving on the scene, she was shot at point-blank range by fleeing robbers, left to die on the pavement. PC Beshenivsky was due to go home that night to celebrate her daughter's 4th birthday. Instead, her husband had to tell their children she had been killed. She hadn't even been in the job for a year. Though there were murder convictions the following year, it has been a long fight for justice across 3 continents to catch the entire gang involved. The last to evade justice was the ringleader, Pirandita Khan, who was detained in Pakistan in 2020 and didn't face trial until this year. His conviction for murder, the final chapter in a story which began on that dreadful day nearly 20 years ago.
Sealed off and the subject of an intensive police investigation, this was the scene in Morley Street, Bradford this evening, where 2 female officers had been shot, one fatally. They've been called to a reported robbery at a shop at 3:25 this afternoon. There was clear distress among fellow WPCs and utter shock among residents.
I've seen a flood of police officers walking up the road up Morley Street, and I actually walked up outside the Express airline ticket place. There was 2 police officers actually basically gunned to the floor.
The injured officer was rushed to Bradford Royal Infirmary and is understood to be in a serious condition. Much of the centre of Bradford has been locked down, with armed officers deployed around the perimeter of the scene, a cordon which extends for several kilometres.
As the days passed following the shooting and PC Beshenivsky's identity was made public, the scene of her murder was visited by those closest to her. And it became clear just how deep an impact her death was having on her policing colleagues and the community.
3 of Sharon's colleagues place a floral tribute at the road where she died, in shock and in mourning for their lost friend, and all too well aware perhaps that it could easily have been one of them. At a news conference, the Chief Constable of West Yorkshire spoke for his force and police officers everywhere as he was asked to sum up their loss.
Of course, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of upset, there's a lot of anguish, there's a lot of soul-searching questioning going on. These are all the normal human reactions when people have suffered this sort of trauma. And yes, there were a good few tears shed, and yes, I shed a few with them.
The police car remains at the scene in which Sharon and her colleague Teresa Milburn had responded to a panic alarm at the travel agency. Here, the car is on the left of the picture, next to the white post. The travel agency is the low building to the right. 3 men, 2 black and 1 Asian, were coming out of the office when the 2 officers were shot. Sharon was killed, her colleague seriously injured. The men, all smartly dressed, made their getaway down a side street. Today, as the news of the shooting has sunk in, the people of Bradford have been showing their sympathy and support.
To see somebody get killed in such terrible circumstances, it's just absolutely devastating. My heart goes out to the family, to the office.
For the West Yorkshire Police and the community they serve, the shock and sense of loss is profound. Behind the cordons that have sealed off the street where the shootings took place, the search for evidence is painstaking. Every inch of the street outside the travel agents is being examined in detail. As the inquiry continues, so does the steady stream of floral tributes. And Sharon Beshenivsky's mother also came to see and to share the thoughts and condolences of the many who have placed tributes here. They have been brought here from Bradford, West Yorkshire and all over the country. Senior officers, including the Chief Superintendent in charge of the division where she worked, signed a book of condolence at City Hall. The memory of Friday afternoon still raw.
I think the thing that I get comfort from at the moment is that both Sharon's husband and mother told me on Friday night just how much she loved the police and she really, really enjoyed going to work, and it's very sad. Thank you.
Particularly sort of if your watch, as it were, brings it even closer to home. I mean,
Well, of course it does. Anybody, yes, it's your worst nightmare. Yeah, as a boss, it's your worst nightmare, and it's happened.
Detectives worked fast to make the first arrests in the case, with several men, including 2 of the prime suspects, detained in the weeks that followed. And then came a chance for those who knew PC Beshenivsky and those she lost her life serving to say a final farewell.
It was a day the city of Bradford paused in its business to pay its respects to a public servant who lost her life doing the job she loved. Fellow officers, colleagues and friends lined the route, which passed close to the Morley Street area where PC Sharon Beshenivsky was murdered. In a tribute to a fallen officer, the cortege stopped briefly outside Bradford Central Police Station, where more friends and colleagues were given the opportunity to say their own goodbyes. Then, to the beat of a solitary drummer, it was on to the city's cathedral. The murder of this popular young mother and police officer has shocked those who worked alongside her and those she served. Her coffin was draped with the flag of the West Yorkshire Force as it was carried past a guard of honour and into a packed cathedral. 2 men have since been charged with the murder of the 38-year-old who left a husband and 5 children.
On behalf of Paul and the family and of the West Yorkshire Police Service, thank you for your support today, whether in the cathedral or elsewhere. It's not easy to go back to the events of last November. It's not easy to say goodbye.
In October 2006, 5 men went on trial for murder and other offences linked to PC Beshenivsky's death. Before the trial had begun, one of them, Muzakkar Shah, pleaded guilty to her murder. At its conclusion, Yusuf Jama was convicted of the same crime. 2 others were found guilty of manslaughter. Shah and Jama were told they would spend at least 35 years in prison.
These were the last minutes of Sharon Beshenivsky's life. Her police car, seen here in the centre and left of the picture, driven by her colleague Teresa Milburn, was called when a panic alarm was sounded at a travel agency on the right. These grainy images show them as they were met by 2 community wardens who were first on the scene. After a brief conversation, they all move over towards the shop. Within a minute, shots are fired and Sharon Beshenivsky lay dying in the street. She was shot in the chest at point-blank range, killed as the gang raiding the shop were trying to make their escape.
Right, I was in the back kitchen, back of there where the safe is.
Waqas Yusuf, a director of the company, was inside when he heard the shots being fired.
I got outside, Sharon was outside next to the doorway. She was on the floor, she was in a very bad way.
Did she say anything?
No, she was, I could see blood on the pavement coming from her mouth, and she made a small little shriek. Her eyes rolled over. She was in a very bad way.
In just 2 seconds of madness, Sharon Beshenivsky had been shot and killed. Her colleague Teresa Milburn was seriously injured. And it was from here that the gang responsible made their getaway. The gang had assembled the night before in Leeds. 4 were in party mood, their confidence buoyed by the guns they had with them. They were convinced the robbery would be easy and they hoped to take £100,000. The next day, they moved in a convoy of 3 cars to their target. This man, Muzakkar Shah from South London, is the man police believe to have been the gang leader. He pleaded guilty to murder, although Yusuf Abdul Jama from Birmingham, who was also found guilty to murder, claims that it was he who fired the gun.
As they began their sentences, the international manhunt for two other key suspects, Yusuf's brother Mustaf Jama and the gang's ringleader Pirandita Khan, continued. And we heard from PC Beshenivsky's husband Paul about the terrible impact her murder had had on their family.
On the day she died, the family were waiting for her. Their 4-year-old daughter Lydia was having a birthday party. Sharon had been due to come home to light the candles on the cake. Fixed in Paul's mind is the image of one of Sharon's colleagues who arrived instead, with bad news and an urgent request that he should go to the hospital.
There were officers stood in corridors crying. Then the reality sort of hits you, and then you think to yourself, well, you know, what do I tell Lydia and Paul? You know, I think that was one of the hardest things, sort of coming back and having to tell them. You know, and that was, you know.
How on earth did you do that?
That was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Yeah, that was the hardest thing I've done in my life. Because it wasn't just seeing the reaction, it was looking at them and thinking, well, you know, do you understand? You know, and sort of try to explain to them that, you know, they won't see the mother again, you know, on someone's birthday. You know, it was just, you know.
Paul and Sharon were married, having both been married before. He says their attraction was instant, and it was Sharon's love of life that he found so appealing.
She was tremendous, you know. I mean, she had a serious side, but, you know, she just loved to party. She loved social events. She could deal with any individual in any circumstance. If she were being social, you know, she'd let her hair down totally.
But what about the anger against the men who did this to you?
Oh, I don't think they can realise what they've actually done. You know, it's not like they've just taken somebody's life. You know, they've destroyed many lives through this. It's like Sharon's colleagues. If you can imagine their feelings of having to walk into the next doorway to the next incident, what they're going to be confronted with.
And how will you remember Sharon?
But a laugh's the biggest memory. You know, she could turn heads with it. Yeah. I don't think she's ever been to a restaurant where they've forgotten her.
Alongside PC Beshenivsky that day was PC Teresa Milburn, who spoke about her memories of what happened and of her colleague.
Sharon was Sharon. I've got a lot of good memories of her. She was lovely. She was genuine, caring, compassionate person. She brought those qualities to work with her every single day. Sequence of events happened very quickly, as it's been shown on the CCTV, but to me it was like time stopped. When I was laid on the floor, my first concern was officers are on the way and they ain't got a clue what they're coming to. And yeah, I was absolutely terrified and I thought I was going to die. I can remember every second of that incident and it's something that'll never leave me. It's something I had to learn to live with.
The next of the gang to be caught was Yusuf Jama's brother Mustaf Jama. Tracked down in Somalia, he was brought back to the UK following an extraordinary operation.
Lying low with his warlord father, thousands of miles from the street where Sharon Beshenivsky had been murdered, Jama believed he would never be found. However, he didn't bank on the determination of West Yorkshire Police to seek justice for the mother of 3. In fact, Jama was brought back to the UK in a James Bond-style snatch and grab. It was too dangerous for British authorities to enter the part of Somalia he was hiding in, so they paid local officials to get him out. In October 2007, the 29-year-old was ambushed at a roadblock in his home village and held by a 15-strong militia. The following day, he was flown to Dubai amid such security, the pilot feared he was a terrorist. From there, he was brought back to the UK to begin the court process. Now, 4 years after Sharon Beshenivsky was murdered, he's been jailed for 35 years.
Well, I just think he's scum. Yeah, I just think he's scum. You know, he deserves to be behind bars.
He never showed any remorse at all?
No, not at all. You know, I mean, he even give police the finger, didn't he? So, you know, it shows what a callous person he is.
With 6 now in custody after PC Beshenivsky's murder, the search goes on for the mastermind of the plot.
That search would last until 2020, 15 years after PC Beshenivsky was murdered, when the final suspect was detained in Pakistan.
Today, this man, 71-year-old former bouncer Pirandita Khan, appeared in court in Islamabad after being arrested in Pakistan. Until now, Sharon's family haven't been able to move on.
He's just not been in the equation, he's not been convicted of anything, he's yet to go to trial. And I think until that's out of the way, there's not going to be a closure.
British authorities are liaising with their counterparts in Pakistan over the extradition of Pirandita Khan, who will appear in court again later this month.
It would take another 3 years for Pirandita Khan to be extradited to the UK and be charged with PC Beshenivsky's murder, eventually going on trial in February this year.
Now, the prosecution has told the jury that the 3 robbers were in fact part of a 7-strong gang, and the ringleader of that gang was the man in the dock now, Pirandita Khan, aged 75. They say that although he didn't pull the trigger, he was in the safety of a lookout car nearby, and he was complicit in what happened.
6 weeks later, the jury was sent out to consider its verdict.
Almost 20 years after PC Sharon Beshenivsky was shot dead, the robbery ringleader is finally found guilty. The officer was only in the job 9 months when she was killed responding to an alarm at a travel agent's. Pirandita Khan went on the run but was extradited back here last year and convicted.
West Yorkshire Police have remained doggedly determined to bring all of those to justice that were responsible for these offences. PC Sharon Beshenivsky lost her life in the most horrific of circumstances, in the line of duty. She will always be remembered.
Nicknamed the uncle of the gang, Pirandita Khan orchestrated the raid knowing that loaded weapons would be used.
Would you like to say something? No. No comment.
He fled to Pakistan 2 months after the killing and evaded authorities until his arrest there in 2020. 3 years later, and looking considerably more frail, he was extradited to the UK.
On the 18th day of November 2005, murdered Police Constable Sharon Beshenivsky.
Finally, West Yorkshire Police had him in custody.
Do you wish to say anything?
I'm not murdering anybody.
Khan admitted robbery, claiming he was trying to recover £12,000 owed to him. In this house in Leeds, he prepared the gang, and on Friday the 18th of November 2005, he travelled with them to Bradford. As the raid unfolded, Khan kept lookout nearby, eating sandwiches in this Mercedes. Prosecutors arguing that his pivotal role in planning the murder made him as guilty as if he pulled the trigger himself. Former Detective Chief Superintendent Andy Brennan led the initial inquiry and recalls the day Sharon was shot. It was her daughter's 4th birthday.
It wasn't until I walked into the door and I saw the cards and the presents that it really hit me. I wanted to be measured and controlled, and just to give them that reassurance really that we would sort this, we would find everybody responsible and we would do it, and we owed that to Sharon.
It has taken 2 decades to deliver that justice. Sharon Beshenivsky was a mum known for her infectious laugh, and an officer who served West Yorkshire Police with enormous pride.
The robbers who went into that travel agent in November 2005 came away with just a few £1,000s. A crime which ripped a mother away from her family and a passionate police officer away from her colleagues and the community she served. The men responsible have now finally all been convicted, bringing justice and some closure for those who will forever remember PC Sharon Beshenivsky.